Imagine for a moment a man standing in the shadows at his own funeral, not as a ghost or a figment of someone's imagination, but as a living, breathing person, heart pounding as he watches his loved ones grieve. He's not there to say goodbye, but to make sure his plan is working. He's hiding just out of sight, blending into the background, a silent observer at the most surreal event of his life. This was the chilling reality for John Darwin, a seemingly ordinary man whose life had spiraled out of control. Overwhelmed by mounting debts and the crushing weight of financial ruin, John saw no escape. He was desperate, cornered by a mountain of unpaid bills and failed investments. In a moment of dark inspiration, he hatched a plan that would shock the nation and become one of Britain's most audacious insurance frauds. John and his wife Anne, once hopeful property investors, found themselves drowning in debt. Their dreams of financial security had crumbled, replaced by constant anxiety and arguments over money. The threat of losing their home loomed over them, and every day brought new reminders of their dire situation. For John and Anne, the pressure was unbearable, and they saw only one way out: disappear and claim the insurance money that could save them. The plan was as bold as it was risky. John would stage a fatal canoe accident at sea, vanishing without a trace. Anne would report him missing, and after a period of presumed death, she would collect £250,000 in life insurance. The red canoe, left adrift on the cold, gray waters, would be the only clue to his supposed fate. But the scheme demanded more than just deception. It required Anne to lie to their sons, Mark and Anthony. She had to look them in the eye, comfort them as they mourned their father, and pretend to be a grieving widow. The emotional cost was staggering, as she juggled the roles of mother, mourner, and co-conspirator. The emotional toll on Anne was immense. She spent countless nights alone, haunted by guilt and fear, wondering if the truth would ever come out. The lure of a debt-free life was powerful, but so was the pain of living a lie. Every day she carried the weight of their secret, never knowing when it might all unravel. John, meanwhile, became a ghost in his own life, a memory, a tragic figure supposedly lost to the unforgiving North Sea. Anne played the heartbroken widow, her grief convincing to everyone around her. Together they tried to erase John from the world, but the past has a way of catching up. Their entire scheme was built on a single, devastating lie, one that required constant vigilance and ever more elaborate cover-ups. Each forged document, every whispered conversation, was another domino in a chain that could collapse at any moment. The deeper they went, the harder it became to escape. This is the story of how desperation, deception, and the hope for a fresh start led John and Anne Darwin into one of the most bizarre and infamous frauds in modern history. A tale where the line between victim and villain is blurred, and where the truth is stranger than fiction. On the chilly morning of March 21, 2002, John Darwin set out from the windswept coast, launching his distinctive red canoe into the restless waters of the North Sea. To anyone watching, it looked like just another routine paddle, a man seeking solace and adventure on the open water, as he had done many times before. The sky was overcast, the waves choppy, and the air carried a biting cold, but John seemed undeterred, his figure soon swallowed by the misty horizon. But beneath the surface, this was no ordinary outing. John never intended to drown that day. Instead, he paddled with purpose, heading for a secret, prearranged landing spot along the rugged shoreline. There, he abandoned his canoe, leaving behind only a few scattered footprints and the endless, whispering sea to keep his secret. It was the first step in a plan that would shock the nation. When Anne, his wife, reported him missing, the alarm was raised immediately. The Coast Guard launched a massive search and rescue operation, scouring the turbulent waters and combing the shoreline for any sign of John or his canoe. Helicopters hovered overhead, boats crisscrossed the waves, and volunteers joined the desperate search, hoping for a miracle. The small seaside community was gripped by shock and sorrow. Neighbors gathered in hushed groups, sharing stories and offering comfort. John's sons rushed home, their faces etched with worry and fear, bracing themselves for the worst. The family's home became a place of anxious waiting, filled with tears and unanswered questions. Days later, the discovery of a red paddle and the shattered remains of John's canoe washed up on the beach. The evidence seemed undeniable, a tragic accident at sea. The community mourned, convinced that the unforgiving North Sea had claimed another life. After an exhaustive investigation, authorities declared John Darwin missing, presumed dead. Posters went up along the coast, and official documents sealed his fate. The case was closed, but the pain lingered for those left behind. Anne, now a widow in the eyes of the world, faced a mountain of paperwork and bureaucracy. She navigated the complex process of claiming John's life insurance, eventually receiving the payout that allowed her to settle their mounting debts and start anew. News of John's disappearance made headlines, and the story spread far beyond their small town. At home, his absence was felt at every meal, every family gathering. Friends and neighbors held vigils, lighting candles and sharing memories, convinced that John Darwin was lost to the sea forever. As weeks turned into months, the world moved on. But for Anne and John, the first phase of their audacious plan was complete. The deception had worked, at least for now. Unbeknownst to everyone, John Darwin was very much alive. He slipped into the shadows, hiding in plain sight, adopting new routines and disguises to avoid detection. Every day was a careful dance between freedom and fear. The world believed the story was over, but in truth, the deception had only just begun. The next chapter of the Darwin's extraordinary scheme was about to unfold, with consequences no one could have imagined. Anne Darwin's role was perhaps the hardest. She was forced to play the part of a grieving widow, all while knowing the truth that would shatter her world if it ever came out. Each morning, she woke up to a reality that demanded she put on a mask, hiding her true emotions from everyone around her. She had to live the lie every single day, never letting her guard down, even for a moment. The weight of the secret pressed on her shoulders as she walked through her neighborhood, exchanging polite smiles and small talk, always aware that one slip could unravel everything. She comforted her grieving sons, holding them close as they mourned their father, all while knowing John was alive, hidden just out of reach. The guilt gnawed at her, especially during those quiet moments when her sons looked to her for strength and answers. To friends and neighbors, Anne was the very picture of resilience and grace under pressure. Yet, every condolence, every sympathetic gesture was a painful reminder of the deception she was maintaining. She became an expert at accepting sympathy she didn't deserve, her heart heavy with the knowledge of her own duplicity. Anne handled the official inquiries with a calm, practiced demeanor, filling out endless paperwork, answering questions from authorities, and collecting the insurance money. She kept up the facade with remarkable composure, never letting her anxiety show. In public, she was the grieving widow everyone admired. In private, she was John's accomplice, secretly communicating with him through coded messages and late-night phone calls. Every interaction was a careful dance, designed to keep their secret safe. The psychological burden was immense, her double life isolating her from everyone, especially her sons. She became increasingly withdrawn, haunted by the fear of discovery and the pain of betraying those she loved most. For 5 long years, Anne's performance was flawless. She maintained her daily routines, kept up appearances, and never let her exhaustion show. But the cost was steep: her integrity, her peace of mind, and ultimately her family's trust. Every day was a risk, every knock at the door a potential disaster waiting to happen. The constant fear of exposure kept her on edge, her nerves frayed by the relentless pressure of living a lie. The lie became her prison, trapping her in a world of secrecy and isolation, with no clear way out. While Anne played the widow, John became a ghost in his own life. He hid in a secret room connecting their house to a neighboring bedsit, just feet from his old world. He grew a beard, adopted disguises, and ventured out only at night. John even listened to his sons visit Anne, separated by just a wall. Using a false identity, he and Anne traveled abroad, dreaming of a new life in Panama. In 2006, they bought property there, planning an escape funded by fraud. John's audacity grew, but so did the risks. The perfect crime was starting to unravel. For 5 years, the Darwins' plan seemed foolproof, until bureaucracy caught up with them. Panama changed its residency laws, requiring proof of identity John couldn't provide. Their dream of a new life was suddenly in jeopardy. Meanwhile, back in the UK, Anne's suspicious behavior and financial moves drew police attention. Investigators quietly reopened the case, tracking her communications and trips to Panama. The net was closing in, but John's arrogance would be their undoing. He decided to return to the UK, planning to fake amnesia and reclaim his old identity. The stage was set for their spectacular downfall. On December 1, 2007, John Darwin walked into a London police station, claiming amnesia. The media exploded. Canoe Man returns from the dead was headline gold. The public was captivated by the apparent miracle, and John's emotional reunion with his sons was broadcast everywhere. But behind the scenes, police were skeptical. John's selective memory and the timing of his return raised red flags. Doctors found no evidence of amnesia, and detectives suspected fraud. As the investigation deepened, public opinion shifted from sympathy to suspicion. The story transformed from a miracle to a crime drama. The world waited for the truth to emerge. The Darwin's web of lies was about to unravel. The entire scheme collapsed with a single photograph. A simple Google search revealed a 2006 photo of John and Anne in Panama, smiling for a property website. The image was irrefutable proof. John was alive, and Anne was in on the fraud. The photo made headlines, turning public sympathy into outrage. For their sons, it was a devastating betrayal. Anne's story crumbled. She fled Panama but was arrested upon arrival in the UK. John, already in custody, could no longer maintain his amnesia lie. The couple's meticulous plan was undone by a digital footprint. Their private deception became a global scandal. The truth was finally exposed. With the evidence overwhelming, John and Anne Darwin faced justice. In July 2008, they stood trial for deception and money laundering. John pleaded guilty and was sentenced to over 6 years in prison. Anne claimed coercion, but was found guilty and received a slightly longer sentence. The trial revealed the full extent of their betrayal, not just of insurers, but of their own children. Mark and Anthony disowned their parents, devastated by the deception. The Darwins lost everything: money, property, freedom, and family. Their dream of a new life ended in disgrace and prison. The case became a benchmark for audacious fraud. The price of their lie was total ruin. The Canoe Man story is a cautionary tale about the cost of greed and deception. John and Anne's elaborate scheme led not to paradise, but to prison and family destruction. Released in 2011, they divorced and went separate ways. John reportedly lives abroad. Anne reconciled with her sons and wrote a book expressing remorse. Their story became the subject of documentaries and dramas, a symbol of bizarre criminal folly. The smiling Panama photo remains a haunting reminder of their callousness. The case shows how a single desperate act can destroy everything. There are no shortcuts. Deceit always comes at a devastating price. For more incredible true stories, subscribe to our channel.